It's my body. You don't get to demand anything from me. My name is Derek Langston. I'm 33. And I've been teaching 3rd grade at Westfield Elementary in Kansas City, Missouri for 8 years. When my wife Madison spoke those words, we'd been married for exactly 5 weeks and 2 days. In that entire time, she hadn't let me touch her once. Not a kiss that lasted beyond a second. Not holding hands while we watched TV. Nothing. I sat there on our couch. The same brown leather one I'd bought 3 years earlier, when I'd resigned myself to living alone and tried to process what she meant. We had dated for 14 months. We've talked about everything. We had been intimate before the wedding. We'd even lived together for 6 months before saying I do at St. Catherine's Chapel. But the moment we exchanged vows, something shifted. Madison, I'm not demanding anything, I told her. I'm just asking why you won't even kiss me goodnight. She turned back to her phone, scrolling through something I couldn't see. I told you, my body, my choice. Lately, that phrase had been her response to every time I asked if we could share a bed instead of her sleeping in the guest room. When I tried to hold her hand at dinner with my parents last Sunday. When I suggested we take a weekend trip to Doug. Celebrate our first month of marriage. I respect that completely, I said. But we're married. You thought wrong? She replied without looking up. I went to the kitchen and made myself a turkey and Swiss sandwich on wheat bread. Same thing I'd been eating for lunch at school since September. As I chewed, I realized something had been bothering me for weeks. Back in March, during one of our premarital counseling sessions with Pastor Williams, Madison had made a comment that had stuck with me, something about marriage being about security and partnership, not just physical stuff. At the time, I thought she meant we had a deep bond beyond attraction. But staring at the empty mayonnaise jar I'd forgotten to replace, I began to wonder if I'd missed something important. The Madison I dated would curl up beside me during movies. I'd laugh at my terrible jokes about fractions and long division, and wake up early on Saturdays to make coffee and sit with me while I graded papers. This Madison acted like I was a roommate she barely tolerated, and something in her voice when she'd said, "You thought wrong," made me suspect. This wasn't temporary, it had been her plan all along. I'd met Madison at a teachers' conference 2 years earlier in October. She was a social worker for the district, dealing with the tough family situations teachers like me couldn't manage alone. She was quiet, thoughtful, with a way of listening that made you feel heard. And when she smiled, which wasn't often, it felt earned. Our first date was coffee downtown. We talked for 3 hours without touching work. She told me about growing up in a small Illinois town, about her parents' divorce when she was 12, and how she'd learned early that people weren't always what they seemed. I told her about losing my dad in college, how teaching had pulled me out of a dark place, and how I'd almost given up on finding someone who understood. My job wasn't just a paycheck. For that first year, everything felt right. She came to school events, spoke easily with other teachers. My mom liked her instantly, a rare thing, since my mom had an opinion about every woman I dated. Madison fit my life naturally. But looking back now, the warning signs were there. She never talked about the future except in vague terms about building something stable. When we moved in together last summer, she insisted on separate bank accounts and splitting everything evenly. Even though I made more and had said I didn't mind covering more. During our engagement, she seemed more invested in the wedding details than in marriage itself. She could spend hours researching flowers but would change the subject if I mentioned a honeymoon or where we'd live long term. When I suggested starting a family in a couple of years, she'd just nod and say, "We'll see." The biggest red flag came during our final counseling session in August. Pastor Williams asked what we were most looking forward to in marriage. Spoke about building a family and growing old together. Madison said she was looking forward to a stable foundation to build from. When he asked what she meant, she said marriage would give her the security to focus on her career. I took that as practicality. She'd always been reserved, cautious with her words. I figured it was just nerves. But watching her now, scrolling her phone like I wasn't in the room, I realized that wasn't nerves. That was honesty. She had married me for stability, not love. And the intimacy she'd shown before, that had just been part of securing the deal,